Good afternoon, good morning, good whatever it is, wherever you have to be watching this and whatever time, day or night it is that you happen to be logged on. My name's Mark Duncan, and I'm a certified athletic trainer that lives in San Angelo, Texas. Imagine San Angelo, Texas. Yeah, if the hat and the accent didn't give it away, I don't know what would. But anyway, I'm glad that you're here with me, and I want to spend the next hour having a conversation with you. A conversation about workers' comp and really kind of my perspective and some things that I have learned about it. Uh, Mainly, one of the reasons that I have been so impressed with the Workers' Comp College and with what Mark Pugh and others have decided to do and why they have decided to do it. So about 40 years ago, I was a young athletic trainer, fresh out of college, and I took a job at one of three places that back then athletic trainers could work. They could work at the professional level, and very few of those jobs available. They could work at the collegiate level. Well, I had just gotten out of college. That's the last place I wanted to go back to. Or they could work at the high school level. And that's where I chose to go to work, in a small rural town in far west Texas. Now, I was the only athletic trainer for 100 miles any direction. And so I was fortunate enough that I got not only to take care of the kids at my school, but the kids in surrounding schools. And it wasn't long after I got started that I thought, man, alive, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. I'm kind of in my own weird way, entrepreneur. I'm a dreamer more than anything. And I got to thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could take and build an athletic training room in maybe a clinical or a hospital setting? Now, I had no more than kind of thought or come up with that concept than it was met with resistance by most of my peers. In fact, nearly all of my peers. Because you see, athletic trainers were supposed to stay in athletic training rooms, and athletic training was defined by what went into those. And you say, why are you talking so much about athletic training? And I'll tell you, when this journey all started, the term sports medicine didn't even exist. Yeah, it's been that long ago, but the term sports medicine had not even developed and had not even evolved, and it darn sure doesn't look like the specialty that it is today. So I bring a unique perspective to really what Workers' Comp College and the people that are involved with it are trying to do. And they're trying to help the workers' compensation aspect of healthcare delivery evolve and develop into something more than what it is. Because you see, there's a perception that's not real positive about workers' compensation. We've all heard it. It has to do with the unmotivated workers. It has to do with, the evil employers. It has to do with the providers that actually take care of those people and what's their real, desire. And so there are a lot of kind of perceptions that are out there that I think we have to be able to get past. And the best way we can get past those things is to do what we're fixing to do now for the next few minutes, and that has to have a conversation about it. So I've talked a little bit about what we have in common, but I really want to talk a little bit more about that desire to change the system. And like I said, the first thing we have to address, no doubt, is the perception, okay? And that starts with ourselves. It starts with us. It starts with us, and then it will be able to evolve and grow to the other people that we deal with. But we have to take that perception, those negative perceptions, and when we first of all have to admit and acknowledge that they are there, and that for a large part of it, those perceptions are a reality. They're real. And we have to focus not on what's wrong with them, but how do we fix it? And the best way that we're going to be able to fix this thing is really to talk about the delivery system, the delivery of workers' comp services. It was the fundamental change that happened in sports medicine, the delivery of sports medicine services, the delivery of athletic training services specifically, came from this traditional settings to these whole different settings. And now sports medicine facilities They exist all over the country, and although mine is very unique to me, there's others that are very unique to themselves, and even some other ones that are very similar. But at the end of the day, we're all focused on a delivery system. We're focused on delivering a product to athletes, and same idea happens in workers' compensation. We're talking about delivery of medical services or delivery of support services to the injured worker. So we talk about perceptions, we talk about delivery. And finally, if we focus on those two things, an interesting thing is going to happen. Outcomes. Yeah, outcomes. It's the way we're all judged ultimately, but outcomes will improve. And that doesn't just mean outcomes in the sense that everyone will have perfect surgeries or everyone will have perfect outcomes, but nonetheless, we will see the potential for outcomes to get better than they are, because unless we are really willing to look at it and address it openly and honestly, outcomes will never change. And as I said just a few seconds ago, outcomes are ultimately how we're all judged. So like I said, 40 years ago, it was all about perception, delivery, and outcomes, and here we are today talking about those same three things. So let's talk about motivation. You're all motivated to be here. I hope you are. I hope in the last 6 minutes you haven't said enough is enough. I hope you've stayed with me. So let's talk a little bit about motivation. And it's basically broken down into two areas, extrinsic and intrinsic. You know, intrinsic meaning self-motivation. How I got up and got out of bed this morning and came to work. How I do what I do. Why I do what I do. What happens from within. And that's very, very important. And to some people, that is the most important, the largest driving factor that they have in their lives. But there's also the extrinsic motivation. And there are a lot of different ways people describe this, but I describe it as the 3 F's. Extrinsic motivation is your family, your friends, and the fellowship that you have with other people. Interesting. It's simple, but it's true. Our extrinsic, our outward motivation comes with our family. Those people that we love, we care for, that we want the best for. And it may be our nuclear family. It may be our extended family. It may be our church or religious family. It may even be our work family. But nonetheless, people you consider family. And then we talk about our friends. Friends mean different things to different people. But we all have friends. And our friends can motivate us. They can motivate us in a good way. They can motivate us in a bad way. But the fact of the matter is that who we associate, who our friends are, has a direct impact on our motivation. And finally, the fellowship. And the fellowship about it I describe as what we do, what we enjoy as far as positive. I don't really like to focus on the negative part of fellowship because it really doesn't fit my definition of that. I always say fellowship is where family and friends come together, but it really comes together with those people you would consider both part of your family and part of your friends. So there are the intrinsic and extrinsic motivating factors that affect all of us, including the injured worker. Now, back in about 1959, there was a guy, Herzbergs, who came up with a two-factor theory. And for the longest time, this is really what everything revolved around. And I find it now, when I look back on it, it's very true, but I find it to be very clinical. And he talked about two factors that affected people's motivation. And the first were things that he called hygiene. Yeah, that's a really clinical term. But anyway, hygiene, and it involved company policies, supervision, relationships, work conditions, remuneration or salaries, and security. And he said those were the things, basically, either the fact that they were there or the lack thereof, that created negative motivation, made people unmotivated. Company policies, okay? Company policies that tell tell employees what they can't do, tell employees the things that will get them in trouble, tell employees these things. Supervision. Back in 1959, the world was a lot different place than what it is now, and the way people were supervised were significantly different. But the fact of the matter is that supervision still exists today, just as company policies do. Relationships, work conditions, salaries, and security. Anyway, all of those were hygienic or hygiene factors. The other factors that he talked about really were what he called motivators. And it's interesting because he talked about, first of all, achievement. Achievement being a motivator. And there's something in all of us that really gives us some satisfaction when we achieve something. It really does. It makes us feel real good. It gives us warm fuzzies. It's a positive thing. So we think about achievement as a motivating factor. We think about recognition. Yeah, we think about the fact that somebody says, hey, you did a good job. You achieved something. Those things tend to motivate us. Achievement and recognition, telling you the good things that you've done and rewarding you for those, as opposed to suppressing you with dealing with the things that you can't do or you shouldn't do. So, achievement, recognition, and work itself. If you haven't figured out by now, I love my job. Even after almost 48 years of doing what I did as a student and as a professional, I love my job. Every day I get up and I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I've never really had a job. I just get up and go to work. This is my hobby. It's what I enjoy doing. And so work itself can be a motivating factor, provided that it's work that people want to do. And interestingly enough, most people who work, given the choice, they're going to do what they want to do. Talks about responsibility as a motivating factor. Do I have responsibilities or do I not have responsibilities? Generally, if we want to get people to buy in, if we want them to feel like they're a part of something, we give them responsibility. And we recognize them. We let them see achievement when they fulfill those responsibilities, and it creates positive motivation. Advancement. That's kind of a touchy one for me because I've been my boss for, like I said, almost 40 years in its own weird way. The advancement I've had within my sports medicine center has really been kind of interesting. Now, the evolve and the way things have changed for me, but I totally get it. As I said, I work in a hospital setting. I work for a hospital system. And yes, we all want to be able to achieve things. We want to be able to advance. We want to be able to better ourselves. And that's a motivating factor. And finally, growth. And you go, well, what's the difference between advancement and growth? And growth is really what we're focusing on right now. I talk about growth as far as education or learning. And that continual, it's just that continual desire, that insatiable desire to know more. And you find people that are really into growth. And we find that by far and large, most of those people are motivated or even highly motivated. So we talk about that, but it goes even deeper than that. And throughout my career, I have learned one thing for sure, and that is that I believe everybody wants an identity. Now, in 1959, Herzberg was really kind of saying that in his own weird way. He just never used those words. But I'll tell you, in 2023 now, identity is so important for us. It really is. Good, bad, or indifferent, but people want an identity. They want to be a part of something. They want to belong. A big part of this is due to social media. Let's be honest. It's amazing the things that people will say or do or put on social media in order to identify themselves or to seek an identity. And that wasn't there long ago. It is something that is unique to us now, and I can only imagine where it's going to go in the future. But another interesting characteristic of identity is it defines people. It really does. People now more than ever feel a need to define themselves. And that's okay, because it follows into my theory that I believe everyone wants an identity. So everyone wants an identity, and I believe honestly, and you're going to have a handout that you can download and run off, and you're going to see one of the things as I talk about these everyone wants an identity is that identity leads to recognition. Let's think about in the workplace. Identity, that person that's known as a hard worker, they're known as someone who can get it done. They deliver results. Those people, they develop a positive identity. They're a positive part of something, and inevitably, it leads to recognition. Recognition, like I said, who doesn't like to be recognized? Who doesn't like to be recognized in a positive manner? Mind you, nobody wants to be recognized in a negative manner, but we're really talking about what motivates people. What really motivates people in a good way, and its identity leads to recognition. And once people get recognition, an interesting thing happens. Satisfaction, recognition creates satisfaction, and satisfaction breeds loyalty. Now, this is really important as we go on and we begin to understand and we talk about things. Like I said, in comp, there are basically three types of employees. There's the unmotivated worker, okay? There's the unmotivated injured worker. There's the motivated injured worker. And then there is the highly motivated injured worker. I really don't talk much about the unmotivated worker because the fact of the matter is experience has taught me whether they're a worker, an athlete, or just a patient, someone from the general public, that non-motivated people, no matter what I do, they're probably not going to be motivated. Now, I may motivate them for a very short period of time, but unless they have that intrinsic self-motivation, I'm probably not going to have much to do it. So how do we deal with motivated worker? In sports medicine and athletics, it was pretty easy. We just cut them, okay? They didn't make the team. We got rid of them. Pretty simple. Not that easy in the workplace, but there is an interesting thing that I learned shortly after I got in the comp world, and that's about the ODGs, the official disability guidelines. And they're out there. They're scientific based. They are proven. And they're really important, I feel like, when we're talking about dealing with the unmotivated worker, because they are the map. They are the matrix. They are what we do. They're what has to be done. And they are particularly important when we get somebody who really doesn't want to go back to work but could go back to work. Because if we follow those ODGs and we do everything that is there, ultimately, we come to resolution. And if we've done everything, dotted all our I's, crossed all of our T's, done everything on our end as regulators, as the people that actually make all this work, then, they can be dismissed. It gets ugly, and that's when a lot of things go to the appellate level, I guess. But nonetheless, the ODGs are there to tell us what to do, but I think they're particularly important when we deal with the non-motivated worker. So we'll go back and we talk about that loyalty in the sense of the motivated worker and the highly motivated worker. This is kind of where it leads to one of my favorite parts. And I get to talk about logos versus emblems. I'm sure everyone out there has a sports team that they love or hate. In Texas, it's a Blue Star, okay? People either love the Dallas Cowboys or they hate the Dallas Cowboys, but it's a logo, okay? And logos are driven by money. You can't see it from the rest of my office, but I'm a huge Boston Red Sox fan. And when I see that logo, I understand a lot of things. It moves a lot of emotions and things about me, but I also know that at the end of the day, it's an entertainment and it's driven by money. And although my feelings about the Red Sox are probably different than the people that are in the inner workings of it every day, the fact of the money is that that's a logo that is driven by money. There kind of comes that thought when we talk about that, as you'll hear me say, if money will fix it, then it's not a problem. When we're dealing with logos, we really can't think about it in those terms. If money will fix it, then it's not a problem. If it's a logo, then chances are, if all that employee is doing is wearing a logo, chances are at the end of the day, if money will fix it, it'll probably fix the problem. Really, when you get right down to it, logos are nothing more than really business transactions. When you get right down to it, that's what they are. I talk about logos, I talk about CEOs. It's interesting. A lot of these people that are going to be at the management level of the companies or corporations that we're working for or with are going to talk a lot about loyalty and all of these things, and they're going to ask it of their employees, and they're going to ask it of everyone else. But an interesting thing happens when a better opportunity comes along. That polo goes off that has one logo on it, and another polo shirt goes on that has another logo, and that's okay because it's at least honest. That is driven by money. So we understand that, like I said, there is the logo. And for the motivated and even the highly motivated worker, they wear that logo and they wear it with pride. But another thing that I like to talk about, and it's really unique when we talk about the motivated and especially the highly motivated worker, involves the brand. Like I said, I live in far west Texas. One of my favorite days of the year has always been a kid and still is today when we go brand. When we take those cattle and we bring them all in, and we do all the doctrine and all the things that we do there, and ultimately before we release them to go back out where they are, we take a hot iron and we burn it into them, and they wear that brand. And there's nothing any more enjoyable than looking out there and seeing a herd of animals with your brand on, okay? And knowing that no matter what happens, that brand will never change. Well, in the workplace, brands, that same idea, that same depth that we talk about in the ranching world as burning that brand on there, a lot of employees are driven, and their brands are driven by loyalty. They are that loyal to a company. They don't care about the logos that management and all those things may wear. They are loyal to the brand. And it's interesting why they are loyal to that brand is because ultimately we go back to everyone wants an identity. That's where they are able to really feel and to really get their identity. And it's important when those people become injured that we be able to know how to deal with them so that they can continue to be motivated, hopefully even highly motivated. But we don't want to take people who have that motivated spirit, motivational spirit, that can do, get to spirit, and all of a sudden because of an injury or an accident, they become one of those unmotivated people. Because once they cross that divide, it's really hard to ever get them back to even neutral, let alone to that highly motivated worker that is driven by the brand, that riding for the brand. I don't work for this company, I ride for the brand. I tell people I don't work for sports medicine, I ride for the brand. And I'm very, very, very conscious of that. I also know that some of my employees, they may love their jobs and they love what they do, but they don't have the same thing invested in what I do, what I've built, that I do. And that's okay. I expect when they wear that sports medicine logo, I expect for them to provide quality services and to be a great person and to do all the things, the values that my organization represents, not just sports medicine, but the entire hospital system. But I understand that it's a long time, and maybe even it never could happen that they will ever actually wear the brand. But for those that do, it's important to understand and acknowledge that they do. Because when they become injured, a lot of different things happen. You see, loyalty is when an injured worker becomes a highly motivated worker becomes injured, there becomes this emotional separation, okay? Be it temporary or be it permanent. But there becomes this separation. And it's when this separation, this loss of identity, this fact that these workers are taken out of what they enjoy doing, what they're recognized for doing, more importantly, where they get their identity, and they get removed. And an interesting thing happens, impacts of injury for the individual. They're personally, they can be related to the team. As I said, they give you identity, but I talk about when the injured worker, particularly the motivated and highly motivated, become injured, there is a primal fear sequence that occurs. I began to notice it in athletics, and it happens at all levels of athletics. And fortunately, over my years of service, I have been able to deal with professional athletes now as well. And it doesn't matter whether it's at the very beginning level of just kiddos, just children, all the way up to the professional level. But when people get hurt, they are naturally removed. Now, as I said, it can be permanent or it can be temporary, but they are removed. And when they are removed, this primal fear sequence, it begins to happen. And so they are removed. It's to protect them from themselves, okay? It may be protect them from others or to protect others from them, but they are removed. And as soon as they're removed, an interesting phenomenon that happens, and that is that fear of being replaced. Removed, and then the fear of being replaced. And that real fear that comes, that guess what? I'm being replaced. I just was injured 5 minutes ago, and I look out there, and now there's somebody else on that floor doing the job that I used to do. I have been replaced. In the athletic realm, it's the fact that you come out that play, and you look in the next play, there is someone there in your place, being replaced. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's a part of the injury cycle in the workplace, in athletics, or even life in general. But they've been removed, then they've been replaced. And as I said, that realization comes, and it's the realization that really things are going to go on with me or without me. Let's talk briefly for a second about what happens if they return. That's the easy thing. So if they have been replaced and they come to that realization, but ultimately they are able to return to either that position or a position that gives them identity and satisfies them. If they are able to return, the sooner they are able to return, the more likely they are to stay motivated or highly motivated. And on the other hand, the longer that it is before they're able to return, the more likely it could be that they could become one of the unmotivated people. There's lots of reasons that happens, but part of it just has to do with human nature. Maybe I'm still getting paid. Maybe I'm still getting all the benefits. Maybe my identity begins to revolve. And but anyway, it can happen. But it's important to know that that return is really important. Now, it has to be meaningful return. I know there was a period or point of time where everything was driven about getting people back to work. And they just wanted people back to work, and they didn't care. You could take someone who was who was doing a very meaningful job, and they wanted him to go lay in a hallway on a stretcher. And the fact was that they were at work. They were at work. There had been no time lost. They were at work. But yet there they were, just laying on a stretcher or pushing a broom, or not that there's anything wrong with pushing brooms, but that they were doing something else. When I talk about return, I'm talking about meaningful return, or at least the appearance thereof. So they've been removed, they've been replaced, they come to that realization. And like I said, for most of them, they're going to be able to return. We just want to try to make that or facilitate it as quickly as we can. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But we talk about what happens to those that are removed, okay? Unable to return to where they are. Well, they can be relocated. In athletics, we talk about it, and relocated could mean anything from maybe they change positions on that team. Maybe they go from a guard to a tackle if they're a lineman, or a linebacker to a defensive lineman. They're relocated somewhere within that team. With the injured worker, it could be, hey, they have been injured, and the ability for them to return in the capacity that they once were, maybe it isn't possible, but they could be relocated within the company. And that kind of crosses and goes over there to the return. But nonetheless, that fear of being relocated, it really involves being relocated in athletics. I know you get tired of that analogy, but traded to another team where you have been riding for that brand. You've been wearing that brand, and now you're asked to go to another area, another job, another corporation, do something different. And you have to leave that brand behind, and more or less that brand's replaced with a logo. So removed, replaced, like I said, there becomes the realization, they can be relocated, and finally at the end of the primal fear sequence comes the reality. They're put out to pasture. They're done. Their career, at least as they knew it, is over. Their identity has been changed dramatically and significantly. And that's real. It's a real fear for people, particularly the people that are motivated and highly motivated. The unmotivated people, they really don't care, okay? The fact that they've been replaced or relocated, or the fact that they're never going to be able to go back and do what they do. As long as they get their money, as long as they get that, that immediate satisfaction or that ultimate satisfaction, they're okay. But for those employees, those people that are really vested in everything, when that reality comes that things are going to be different from here on out, it could be from the severity of the injury. It could be a loss of limb. It could be, there are a lot of things that it could be. This is one of the hard things to talk about, but this is really important. If we're ever going to make a difference and we're going to ever really impact the system, we have to be able to talk about these things, and we have to understand that the people, not necessarily the providers, not the employers, but the ones that are managing these people, the ones that are dealing with them daily, that we understand the magnitude of what happens when the reality sets in that, hey, it's never going to be that way again. And some people like to just look the other way and go, okay, well, that's the way it is. I don't make the news. I just report it. That's the way it is. And I will tell you from experience, that's one way to deal with it. But it doesn't bring a positive outcome, or it's less likely to breed a positive outcome. And remember what we talked about 30 minutes ago. Outcomes are important. At the end of the day, how this all works, those outcomes are important. We're looking for positive outcomes. Even in negative situations, we're looking for those positive outcomes. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. I'm wanting to motivate you to understand that at the end of the day, we are trying to we are trying to establish and get positive outcomes. So, like I said, you'll have a printed sheet of notes that go with you. We'll talk a little bit about the solution to resolution. Like I said, we just finished talking about those things that we know ultimately some things cannot be fixed at the end, okay? They're just not going to be able to be fixed at the end. But we were kind of in that middle part where we talked about returned. There's that realization that, everything's happening and we want to return them to work. That's what this is really all about. We want to take the injured worker and do those things that can get them back to work. And I'll tell you, the first thing that has to be done is you and me, as these people that, like I said, are sitting here living it, because it's not possible for the employers necessarily to do it. We don't really ask, and in some ways don't really want the providers doing it, but these people need a relationship. We need to establish a relationship with them. A relationship that can be built on trust. A relationship that they know who we are and we know who they are, and that we generally care about them, okay? And an interesting thing happens when we build that relationship. We're able to teach them respect. Self-respect as well as respect for others. Remember, we're talking about changing a narrative, changing a thing where these injured workers maintain their self-respect. Sometimes that loss of identity, that loss of who you are, affects what you think of yourself very, very much. And so we have to be aware that we want them to maintain their self-respect. They could have a catastrophic injury, as I said, a loss of a limb, something that mars them or mangles them, and something horrible like that. And they don't look like the same person they were. They can't do the same things they did. But we want them to return to some level of where they're able to work and be productive in society if they can. And we do that, first of all, by helping them to respect themselves and then respect others. I talk to the providers a lot about respecting patients. And I am very fortunate. I am surrounded in a building and an organization of people who truly care about and respect patients. Sometimes it's more difficult than others. When that patient doesn't respect themselves and doesn't respect you or authority, it's difficult. But to create a culture and an environment where you're able to respect people, whether or not they respect themselves, is really a very powerful thing that you're able to do. And I will tell you, if you're able to respect people, as a provider, if you're able to respect people, ultimately, your ability to be able to take care of those people and provide positive outcomes is going to be greatly enhanced. So I try to remind it's that everyone respects everyone else. The patient respects that physician and what they do and what they are trying to do. And that physician actually has their best interests at heart. Isn't working for the company. It doesn't just have the company's interest at heart, but truly has their interest at heart as well. In the sports teams, this was one of the things that sports medicine has evolved, has changed greatly. Back years ago in sports, man, if you couldn't cut it, they cut you. And it was that simple. And unfortunately, a lot of those physicians, everybody wanted to be a part of that group. And if you were part of that healthcare delivery system, and you wanted to maintain and have that identity and wear that logo and be a part of it, hey, it was all about them. It was not about the injured athlete. A funny thing happened, though, as this concept of sports medicine evolved and we really became outcome focused. It really became more centered around the athlete. and a holistic approach to everything, looking at everything as a whole and making sure that everyone respects everyone else for who they are and what they have to do. So we build a relationship. That relationship is then able to create respect for selves and others. And it's only at this point are we able to talk about realistic expectations. If you get nothing else out of the hour that we're going to spend today, get this. We have to be willing to talk about realistic expectations with the injured worker. Okay? Now, if it's a very realistic expectation that they're going to be able to return from this injury and go back and regain a full recovery, we need to be realistic with them about that. We need to say, hey, this is a very real scenario. It's very realistic. And in fact, that it's not that realistic. There's an expectation that comes with that. But hey, you're going to be able to do it. On the other hand, we have to be willing to have that discussion with them when the realistic expectation is maybe not the most desirable. That, hey, look, here's what we're dealing with. I'm not going to try to hide it from you. We're not going to try to cover it up from you. We're not going to sugarcoat it from you. But here's where we're at. Here's what we are dealing with. And we look at it in a very realistic manner. It may be realistic in the fact of not ultimately what they're going to be able to do, but what they're going to be able to do now. And to a certain degree, what those ODGs say is going to happen in their treatment sequence or as they're being treated. We need to be realistic and let them know what's coming, particularly if we know what's coming. And once we're able to do that, then we're able to create what I call relevant reactions. If we talk about realistic expectations, we can expect relevant reactions. And you go, man, what do you mean by relevant reactions? And I say they're reactions that are relevant to what those expectations were. They're reactions that are appropriate for what the real expectations are going to be. Relevant reactions. Like I said, we don't talk about, how horrible things are going to be, but unless they're going to be horrible. We don't talk about how great things are going to be unless they're going to be great. We just talk about it in relevancy. That, hey, here's the way it's going to be. Here's the expectations, but guess what? Right now, here's the way it's going to be. Here's the way we need to react. Here's what you need to do. A lot of those reactions then turn towards us as the healthcare providers, those people taking care of them. Those reactions are going to be maybe it involves we're going to have to order this test. It may involve a procedure. It may be physical therapy. It may be all these things, but those need to be real and they need to be relevant and they really need to be determined by the ODGs. We don't need people going off the matrix or going off and freelancing things. We need them performing relevant reactions, and that's part of our job is to regulate and make sure that those reactions after those expectations are relevant, that we're doing the right things, that we're not ordering unnecessary tests. But nonetheless, if those tests need to be ordered, that the patient understands they need to be ordered and they are performed. So we get realistic or relevant reactions, but they have to be in real time. And this is really important, and it's probably the biggest challenge that we're going to face in workers' comp. Okay? You talk about athletics, and guess what? The quarterback injures his shoulder on Sunday Night Football. And what are they saying? Oh, you're going to have an MRI Monday morning. Okay? I don't know how many of you have had a worker injure themselves on a Sunday night and had an MRI the following morning, but it's not feasible. Doesn't happen. It can happen because unless it's an emergency situation, which are extenuating circumstances, there's a process. There are things that have to be done. But it's important to know that, look, if we can get that MRI done in real time, okay? In real time, like I said, we have to be realistic, but if we can get it done in real time, the chance of them becoming that unmotivated worker and that outcome becoming negative, man, we can greatly reduce that, okay? If that MRI is, if they were injured and they have to wait 2 weeks before they can see the physician, then they see the physician and they order an MRI, and it's another month before they can get the MRI done, and after the MRI done, it's another 2 weeks before they can follow back up with the physician. Guess what? 2 months have passed. That's a long time, and that happens a lot. And so what we need to be focused on, or what we need to really be trying to fix and try to work on, is that these relevant reactions that have to be there happen in real time. We have to be realistic in that real-time expectation, but we need to do all the things that we can to try to create them to be in real time. And guess what? If you've got a provider that doesn't think that real time is important in taking care of the injured worker, you may need to look for another provider. If everything done for the injured worker happens on that provider's time, you may want to look for a different provider, because I hate to say it, but they don't have much respect for that person. They don't have much respect for you, and they don't have much respect for our industry. Those reactions, those relevant reactions, have to happen real time. And an interesting thing happens. If we do those things, build relationships, create respect, have relevant reactions, or follow the ODGs, or follow the appropriate treatment scenarios, and we do them in real time, guess what? Resolution happens, and more times than not, it will be a positive resolution. If those things don't happen, if there is no relationship, if nobody talks to anybody and nobody knows anything, if there's no respect for themselves, or particularly for the system, or for the people you that are trying to help them, the intermediary, or for the healthcare providers that are trying to take care of, if there's no respect there, that end result's not going to be good. If they're really not operating with realistic expectations, chances are not going to end well. If it's not if we're not doing the right things at the right time, probably not going to work. But we know if we do, that the possibility of positive outcomes, it's greatly increased. So we've been at it now about 50 minutes. And I've kind of told you a little bit about how I got to where I am, and kind of my thoughts on this delivery service. And I'm sure some of you at this point in time think, man, that's 50 minutes of my life I will never get back. And if so, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasted your time. But there are going to be others of you that may think, you know what, that old guy may have had, there may be something, positive, or there's something I learned from that came out of it. And that's one reason I wanted us to do this and have a conversation, really as opposed to a lecture. I really think that in order to change things, we don't need more lectures. Although there are going to be a lot of classroom and workers' comp college, and that's really important. But we also have to acknowledge and understand that if we're going to change things, there have to be a lot of conversations. And I've been really lucky to be around a lot of these people that are involved in workers' comp college, and they've had some great conversations. And they're people that really, they really get this, but more importantly, they really care. And in today's world, that's kind of a characteristic that's, maybe it's not as common as it used to be. And so it's that conversation, and that's one of the things I want to encourage you as you go through this. Now comes the motivational part of my talk. But I want to encourage you. I want you to motivate you to have those conversations. Now, it may be with the people you work with, okay? Have that conversation. Don't be afraid to talk about things. And sometimes don't be afraid to talk about uncomfortable things. And darn sure, don't be able to talk about something, or don't be afraid to talk about something maybe that you don't know about. And to admit, hey, I don't know. And to ask somebody who really does. Somebody who does know. And just don't be afraid to have those conversations. The other thing that I think is really important about this community of people that's coming together, and it's that holistic approach. Now, some people talk about the holistic approach. In West Texas, we talk about burning crow's feet and herbs and all that. I'm not talking about that holistic. I'm talking about holistic as the entire thing. And it's that conversation to take this holistic approach to dealing with the injured worker. To really understand where everybody's coming from. And not just to know where everyone is coming from, but to truly understand where they're coming from and why they're there. And I'll tell you, when you're able to really have that conversation, an interesting thing happens. You're able to develop relationships with these people that you're working with. And as we develop relationships amongst ourselves or within ourselves, it allows us to be able to develop those relationships with those injured workers. And at the end of the day, that's one of the most important things that we can do. So it's those types of conversations that happen that I hope are a part of this workers' comp college that you are a part of. And then kind of the last conversation that I want to encourage you to have is that conversation with people that don't know anything about what you do, don't know anything about workers' comp, and those people who have that negative, really just that negative appearance. They've got that built-in negativity about workers' comp and the injured worker. And to really let them know that, hey, what I do is important. This is real. I mean, these people are real. This really happens. And try to take those people that have those, just those negative thoughts. And when they do, don't be afraid to not necessarily that you're going to change their attitude, but don't be afraid to have that conversation with them and go, hey, that may be true. It may have really been true. Like I said, it may still be true, but guess what? Those are things that we're trying to change. And you honestly let people know that you're invested in really trying to make a difference with what we do. Some of you I will never see. Most of you I'll probably never see. Truth be matter is, they're probably never going to ask me to do another video, but that's okay. Maybe this one will get out there. But I hope it's somewhere along the way that we're able to visit face to face, person to person. I'm really passionate about what I do, not just sports medicine, but anything I do. And there's some things that I could learn from you and that I want to learn from you. You'll also see on there, I've got an email address. You can email me, and if it's one of those things where we need to have a conversation, we can set up a way to do that. Like I said, I'm not an authority. I'm just telling you what I know and what I've learned, and I hope to be able to share it with you. We had some goals to understand intrinsic and extrinsic motivating factors, the importance of a new service model, the difference between logos and emblems, the primal fear sequence, those kind of things. As you can hear, the timer's telling me my time is done. So give me just a second. I'm back for just a couple of more minutes. And the fact that we need to focus on solutions to resolutions, and that we all must be motivated to change. But I'll leave you with three things. If you get nothing else, understand this. And the first one is, if money will fix it, it's not a problem. And the man that told me that day didn't have two nickels to rub together. And I told him that. I said, Dad, you tell me money will fix it, it's not a problem. And Dad, you don't have any money. And he said, well, that's my problem, not yours. And I'll assure you that has been one of the most important lessons that I've learned in life, that if money will fix it, it's really not a problem. And that doesn't mean they're always going to throw money at it and that the problem is going to be fixed, but understand this. If money will fix it, it's really not a problem. The second thing is to show people how much you care before you tell them how much you know. To show people how much you care before you show or tell them how much you know. Because as I said earlier, the ability to care is powerful in today's world. We live in a world where caring is kind of a lost art. And someone who has the unique ability to truly be able to care. People see it and recognize it, and they are drawn to it. And finally, if you do the right things for the right reasons, you never have to worry about the outcome. Never. It'll take care of itself, and it will be a positive outcome. Almost 40 years ago, when I had this idea about transforming my profession. It's one of the things that a lot of people struggled with. They didn't understand. I was trying to do the right things. And I was motivated by doing the right things, but particularly for the right reasons. And I say it like this. If the only reason you don't steal is because you're afraid of getting caught and going to prison, guess what? You're doing the right thing. You're just doing it for the wrong reason. And I would encourage you, implore you, and tell you, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life as well, is to focus on doing the right things for the right reason. Because as my dad used to say, anybody can do the right thing. The secret is to do the right thing for the right reasons. Once again, I'm Mark Duncan from San Angelo, Texas. I've enjoyed this hour that we've spent together, and I hope you have as well. Good day and God bless.